Hello and welcome to the Empowered by Claudia podcast, where we explore all things self-development. Here you'll discover practical tools, tips and strategies to help you feel more confident, empowered and in control of your life. I'm Claudia, I'm your host. I'm a registered nurse and mindset coach, fear of success instructor, and most importantly, your guide on your self-development journey. I know firsthand how confusing and overwhelming and isolating this path can feel. So I created this podcast so you never have to navigate it alone. Hello and welcome to the Empowered by Claudia podcast. I'm your host, Claudia. And this week we're going to be talking about how to cope when life is throwing all of the things at you and you're just not sure how you can rise above, how you can keep going because it all just feels too much. So we've had a lot going on this week, a lot of emotions, a lot of challenges, and that's me, my friends, my business as well, and conversations I've been having with people. It feels like there's a lot going on. It feels very busy, and it can be really easy to slip into this idea that everything's going wrong or that everything is against us. And I really don't subscribe to toxic positivity where we just pretend everything's okay and we smile through it and we're like, yes, everything's fine, when inside you're crumbling. I don't think that's healthy, and I would hate for people to dismiss anything negative. But I think that when things happen, we need to pause and take a breath and really just name what it is that's happening and what we're feeling. So, for example, I had an appointment on Monday. I was sent a message from the GP saying they wanted me to book in to talk about my blood results, and I did so, and I prepared everything. I knew what I wanted to say, what I thought was going to be the outcome. And I thought, well, they've asked to see me, so maybe they've got some ideas. But the actual appointment, I left feeling quite disheartened because it was almost a bit like, well, it's not really an issue. Just carry on and we'll do your bloods again in 3 months, which I'm like, well, that could have been a message. You didn't need to see me for an appointment if you weren't going to do anything. And so I did find that quite frustrating. And it'd be really easy to think, well, okay, nobody else cares, and, well, that's it, and just feel a bit despondent. But for me, it was acknowledging that I felt disappointed, that I felt that there wasn't that being listened to. But actually, what do you do next? So the next point of call is to continue researching, to continue looking up what the standard of care should be, the things to look out for, and actually what things can I do, what's in my control to do to try and help that. And, if it still remains a problem, then actually make an appointment with a different GP and seeing if there's something else that can be done, rather than just going, well, one person said no. And it wasn't even that they said no, it was just the complete disinterest, which was frustrating because, like I said, I'd been asked to come to the appointment, and then you think, well, I've just taken an hour out of my day by the time I've travelled to the surgery part, gone for the appointment, go back. It was frustrating. Acknowledging that and then thinking, okay, so what do I need to do next? And being conscious of how much energy I want to waste. So I could have spent the rest of the day going, this doctor was terrible, that, I'm going to go on social media and I'm going to moan, I'm going to leave a bad review, I'm going to, cut off my nose to spite my face and refuse to go and see them ever again. Or actually think, well, it's probably the end of a long day and maybe I didn't articulate my concern enough. Maybe that actually it's a different specialist kind of problem. And as a side note, I have contacted my hospital specialist to see if there is any advice from them as well. And it's those kind of things. It's like, I can, I'm not going to shift my energy to being immensely happy, but I can use that disappointment to be more constructive, to give me that motivation to make phone calls And it turned out like I rang up, I asked to be put through to the consultant secretary, and they put me through to the complete wrong department. And I rang back and I eventually got through to the right number. But I could have been deterred the first time. I thought, well, it's not meant to be. But actually, I know that this needs action, that this isn't right. But feeling angry or embittered about the process isn't helping me. And yeah, it can feel really good to get that anger out, but actually it's not really constructive. So yeah, being conscious of what you're putting your energy into and remembering that our brain will remember the things that we focus on, that we're giving attention to, and we will register when we see negative news stories, where we see complaints, where things haven't gone right, because our brain is going, oh, she's interested in that kind of thing. So let's go and find other examples. The other thing that I needed to do was to do something that was going to help me shift those feelings. I've definitely mentioned this before, but I just love actually sitting there and like shaking it off, like shaking away the bad energy. You can dance to Taylor Swift if you want. Whatever it is, just move your body. And I went to the gym and I did feel better. I felt exhausted, but I felt better for moving, catching up with some friends and getting out of the house and doing something different, because, you know, they do say a change is as good as a rest. And I fully believe that. Like, well, moving is my meditation. Like, I really struggle to calm my mind and focus. Whereas when I'm dancing, I can't think of anything else because I go wrong massively, much to the entertainment of my friends, myself, because you can't take yourself too seriously. But that changing activity, it took me out of myself. I had a vent, and then that's it. It's done. I'm moving forward. And going on to that, thinking about how we reframe things. So, yes, it was disappointing that it wasn't the response I had expected. You know, I prepared for the appointment. I downloaded various guidelines and things, but actually there wasn't really a moment to talk about them because of the way that the appointment was. But the positives are that they have put a note for me to be recalled for another blood test in 3 months. You know, that is positive. The positive is that they actually said, well, what is happening isn't right, but that it'd be better off if the specialist advised. That is still a positive. So even though there weren't answers there and then, there's still hope. And I don't think I've talked about this for a while. Have a thing called a win list. And it's basically a list of things that I'm counting as wins. Because when we think and focus on those positive things that happen, no matter how big or small, we are helping our brain to begin to recognize and look for those things. There's a ratio that I want you to remember, and it is that in order to outweigh one negative, we need to pay attention to 5 positives. So if one bad thing happens, so you drop a book in a puddle, it's a really random example, but it's your favorite book and it's all muddy and wet. You need to then see 5 good things in order for your brain to kind of downrate the severity of the negative, as it were. So thinking, oh, okay, that's a beautiful rainbow, or I've just had a really nice sandwich, or I've just had a great catch up with a friend, or I'm wearing my favorite top and I'm feeling really, really nice today. Whatever it is, actively thinking of those 5 things will help put that one negative thing into perspective. So yes, 5 to 1. So 5 positives for a negative. And that will really help in how you perceive how your day was, how your week was, and actually sitting there and celebrating it. So I created a post, and by the time I release this podcast, the post will have gone out. But basically about celebrating some things that have happened in my business this week. So despite there's been a few things which I won't talk about on the podcast, but a few quite tricky situations. I've actually had a written podcast episode done about me, and I'll link to that in the show notes. I've been listed as a guest expert on a directory, and I've also I was in a podcast on someone else's podcast all about imposter syndrome. I've had more listens to this podcast in the beginning of this year than I did the whole of last year. And, things like that. It's only when you stop and you reflect that you actually notice these things. And this is why I think it's really important to proactively have a list of those wins. I will pop a link in the notes and you can download a list that I've created that you can just print out and have it to hand, or you can edit it on your computer, and just so that you're constantly aware of those positive things that are coming in. On Monday, I went for a hot chocolate with a friend, and I'd won a £5 voucher, and that paid for my drink. And it was such a nice way to start the week. But I probably didn't celebrate that. So I'm going to write that on the list, that I won that voucher and I got to use it to have a nice hot chocolate with a friend. And we had a great conversation, a great catch up. And those little things that when the week's been challenging, they slip off your memory. So actually by intentionally having a routine of writing these things down is so important. And then when you look back at the list, you're not listing the negatives that have happened. You're listing all of these little positives, and they add up, and it gives you that boost going, actually, something is going right. We are moving in the right direction. There is positives and progress. And even though there are blips and times feel really hard, we can move past that and good things still happen to us. We are lucky. Rather than defaulting to, I'm so unlucky, bad things always happen to me. She go, no, I am lucky. These good things do happen. It's just that the bad things are just more emotionally charged, so we remember them more. And that said, talking to a friend, obviously being conscious of who you're talking to. I think sometimes there are conversations for different friends, and I think being aware of where that person is and maybe asking for permission rather than trauma dumping on them without any warning is important. But I do think it's so therapeutic to be able to talk, to be able to laugh about things. We had a terrible morning the other moment, and I was recapping this literally ridiculously long list of disasters that kind of happened. And me and my other half could not help but laugh because it was just so ridiculous. I was like, this, you couldn't even write it. But that laughter helped shift that energy from actually being really frustrated and fed up to going, actually, do you know what? This too shall pass. And yeah, that the laughter definitely helped. So the last thing I want to talk about is about being aware of what you really need. And that can be really hard. When it's been a tough week, we don't always have the luxury of being able to switch off and recharge and care for ourselves in the way that we really need to, because we still have responsibilities and we still need to feed the kids and get them to bed and do those things. We can't necessarily just crawl into our beds and go to sleep, no matter how much we really need to. So thinking about how you can reduce the pressure on yourself, how you can reduce that demand, and actually think, like, what is the minimum that we can get away with? Or where can I change the things that I'm doing to be a bit more restorative to me? So if I'm having to make food, I might as well make something that's going to make me feel good, that's going to feel restorative. And those little things add up. Maybe we can reevaluate our plans and maybe we can do something a little less energetic. Maybe we can completely swap and just say, actually, we're not going to go out, we're going to play in the garden, or we're going to invite some friends round so the children are entertained and I can actually just sit and have a chat. The other day, I picked up a friend's child from school and they were playing in the garden and his mum came to pick him up and she actually helped me change Evie's curtains and put her new bedding on because the old ones were giving her nightmares for some unknown reason. I mean, it's nursery. It's like a Winnie the Pooh nursery wallpaper and curtains and lampshades that she's had since she was a baby. They were Harry's before hers. And she suddenly just decided that it were giving her bad dreams. So they had to go. So last weekend I had to strip off the old wallpaper and then managed to, with another voucher, get a new set of curtains and lampshades and bedding so that she doesn't have bad dreams anymore. And yes, she's got a bare wall, but she reassures me that she's more than happy with a bare wall that's been stripped of wallpaper than having the old wallpaper on there. And it is, you know, I probably would have taken a lot longer to get around to swapping things over than if my friend had, she was there and she's like, oh, come on then, let's do it. And he literally just was like, right, we're doing it. And the kids were entertained and happy playing in the garden while we did it. And then I was like, Evie, looking in your bedroom. She's like, yes, the bad dreams are gone. And I just thought, this is the power of friendship. I'm not entirely sure where I was going here, but I didn't necessarily realize that what I needed was to do something different, to do something that would have a quick inspiration, because it had been weighing on me that I knew that I needed to change these curtains. As with most things, you can end up pushing them to one side. Think about, I need to do this instead. I need to do this and this and this. And actually, if somebody is going to help, you don't need to worry about the mess, the reality of daily life, because true friends accept you regardless of whether the house is an absolute mess or not. And they'll help you. And this week, I really needed that. I needed to do something that was going to help my children, that helped me feel in control. And that leads me to the circle of control, is that there are 3 circles. So there's a circle of control, and around that, there's a circle of influence. So imagine concentric circles. And then on the outside of that is the circle of concern. Now, essentially, the things inside the circle of control are things that you have control of. And things like how I respond to things, the things I do, the things I say, the things I read, my thoughts. The things inside the circle of influence are things that you can influence, but not necessarily control. For example, if I'm really unhappy about something, I could leave a review. But that doesn't necessarily mean that any change will come of it, but I have put my views forward. The same with reaching out to a friend. I can send a message, but I can't force them to respond and interact. I can send my email subscribers an email, but that doesn't mean that they will read it or respond. But I'm operating within my circle of influence. And then with the circle of concern, these are things that are beyond our control. So think the weather, global events. You know, these things are not, we can't influence them. They're not, and yes, they are concern, but are we spending a lot of time getting really het up about things that are completely outside of our circles of control and influence? You see people getting very irate about politics, and you could argue that potentially it's in your circle of influence. You could start lobbying, you could become a member of parliament, all of these things. But on a day-to-day basis, for most of us, that is not really within our circle of influence. And so those kind of things, they're actually going, is this taking a lot of brain power from me? Can I redirect that energy and actually just go, right, I'm going to make peace with that. That is happening. And actually, is it impacting the wider world if I'm stressed? No, but it's impacting me and my family and my friends. And so just thinking about actually what can I control at the moment, grounding yourself in that present moment so that you, like, I'm in the home, I'm safe. This is what's happening right now. And that's where the win list can really help to ground you to go, actually, I'm going to reflect on everything that's happened. And realistically, there's a lot of wins here. The week has been positive. Yes, there are some things that are still up in the air, but that does not negate the fact that there were positive things. And actually, we've learned a lot from this week and there's a lot to celebrate. It can feel really hard when you're struggling to even think, all right, I don't want to think of something positive. I can't think of anything positive. There's nothing positive. But actually, there are things that maybe a little glimmer of hope. Something that is going to tell us that there is more positive things on the way. And thinking also about curating the information that you're receiving. So, for example, directly above my laptop, I have my vision board for the year. I've got pictures of the things I want to do with words on it of, of things that are important to me and things that I want to make time for. And it's constantly there. So it is constantly reminding myself of actually, these are the dreams. These are the things that I want to happen, that I'm working towards. And that when things are challenging, I can look at there and go, no, this is why I'm doing this. This is why we're putting this work in. Actually really reflecting on how far we've come. So I really hope that this is helpful for you. And I'll just sum up. I didn't cover them in the order that I've written them down, so apologies. But being aware of what you need and what you're feeling and acknowledging that without any guilt or judgment, but just going, actually, I'm feeling a bit rubbish. Not forcing yourself to be positive, but maybe trying to move that energy, shaking it off, maybe going and doing an activity that's going to refresh you, that's going to help you restore, that's nurturing you, talking to a friend, offloading some of those challenges with permission, but also thinking about how you can reframe those into, are there any positives that I can focus on as well? Just to try and balance that out. So thinking about a win list, thinking about finding 5 positives to outweigh a negative. And also thinking about how we might want to adapt our plans given how we're feeling. And that actually rigidly sticking to what we previously planned to do is actually probably not in our best interests. And being really mindful about where we are in this present moment and what's within our circle of control and our circle of influence, and trying to let go of the things that are in our circle of concern. And the last thing I want to leave with you is that it's okay to reduce expectations. We don't need to be 100%. We don't need to be perfect. So I want you to say to yourself this week, done, not perfect. It's done. Is the washing done? Is it ironed and folded beautifully? Doesn't matter. It's done. Got clean clothes. So what if they're rumpled? I've done some work. It's done. It doesn't need to be perfect. It's done. It's good enough. And so if you're feeling like this week has been a bit of a challenge, I really encourage you to download the free win list that is in the show notes, and start recording. No matter how little these things are, start recording them. And I promise you, it will give you a boost every time you look at it. And maybe think about having something that you see regularly that's going to give you a reminder of better days to come. Whether it's a vision board, whether it's just something that makes you smile, whether it's a photo of a happy occasion, whatever it is, something that you're going to see regularly that's just going to give you that little boost. Maybe it's a nice plant, whatever it is. And so I'm sending you much love. Don't forget to download your free win list, and I will see you next time. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Empowered by Claudia podcast. I'm Claudia from claudiasabinawellness.com. If you are ready to take your next step and transform your life, all the ways to connect with me, whether for coaching, courses, or any other sort of support, are in the show notes or on my website at www.claudiasabinawellness.com. If you found value in this episode, I'd be so grateful if you could leave a review, share it with a friend, or post about it on social media. Don't forget to tag me at Claudia_Sabina_wellness. Your support helps more people discover the tools and guidance they need. I cannot wait to support you on your journey. Much love.